We're not always going to get along with everyone who lives nearby, but the things the neighbors in this video did were just downright evil. I'd really hate living next to any of these psychos. But the one in the last story who called the cops on a kitten truly takes bad neighbor to the next level. My new neighbors moved in 3 days ago. On the last day, I went out for groceries, and when I came back, their young kids were biking around on our driveway, which is not shared. It's 100% ours. Not a huge issue, we just asked them to move and pulled in. The next day, their kids are riding dirt bikes down our street. We live in a huge, family-oriented neighborhood, and I have 4 kids myself. I just called my kids out to go introduce themselves to the neighbors' kids so they could get to know each other. Big mistake. My kiddos go talk to the new kids, and 10 minutes later, they come back saying that the kids were rude and they'd rather not play with them. Fair, not everyone will get along. On the 3rd day, I was sitting on my couch watching television when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was their kid walking in my backyard. We have a 6-foot privacy fence with a gate, so to get in our yard, he would have had to purposely open our gate. I walked out to my back patio and asked who he is and what he's doing. He says that they're playing ball. It went over the fence and he was coming to get it. I told him that he needed to knock on our door, not just come into my yard. I asked if his mom was home. That's when disaster struck. At this point, my dogs came out of the dog door and make a beeline to the gate that the kid left open. By the time I made it to the front yard, the dog was darting out into the street, and she got hit by a car. She's fine, just bruised, big dog, low speed limit. We were lucky. But in that moment, I was losing it. I'm concerned about my dog, forget to speak to the mom, and take the dog to the vet. I finally got back home 2 hours later. The mom wasn't home when I got back, so I took the time to find a padlock to lock our gate. When I noticed her at home, I went to speak to her. Her reaction was absolutely deranged. Before I could even express my concerns over her son opening my gate and coming into my backyard without permission, she just started screaming at me to not ever speak to her freaking son again. It's only day 3. I can't wait to see what happens on day 4. I know it wasn't intentional, but man, you can't just mess with someone's pets. Even as a kid, if I had accidentally let an animal out, I would have been horrified. And then to double down and not admit their mistake, I'd be absolutely furious. I have a double driveway with 3 cars in it and a 4th that I'd like to park in front of my house. So that's just 1 car in front of my house. But for some reason, my neighbor is upset, even though they use all the spots on either side of their home. That's not to mention the spot they use across the street. My house is next to the house that's directly across the street from them. They also have a car in front of mine. Yet they're super offended that I have 1 car parked in front of my own house. She says I should put it in my driveway because she really needs the space. Hello, you have 12 cars. I don't want to have to shuffle my cars every time someone at my house has to go somewhere to make things more convenient for someone with 12 cars. Now, I've read plenty of stories about parking spot disputes, and I started out skeptical. 4 cars is a lot, but I did not expect where this story was going. 12 cars on a regular old residential street? That's insane. He's like Jay Leno without the garage. There's no way I'd expect my neighbors to put up with that. My next door neighbor filed a complaint to my homeowners association because I was having a frat party. Here's what really happened. My old friend, who happens to be a 59-year-old British woman, was coming to get me, but I was running late. She was talking to my husband in the garage. Her car was parked but was running with her radio playing, and it was 5:15 p.m. in the afternoon. If that constitutes a frat party, I wasted a load of money in college. When I read a story like this, I am absolutely convinced there's no way I have the same type of hearing as someone like this. You can't be serious. If hearing a car radio bothers you that much, I'm sure there's a remote cabin on an island somewhere where you won't be bothered. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here, so I'll let you be the judge. I'll give a bit of a backstory before I start. I'm a disabled female and I use a wheelchair. The building that I live in has 20 units in it over a few floors, and I happen to be on the 1st floor. I've lived here since 2013, when the units were first built. I'm quiet and mostly keep to myself. My unit has 1 bedroom, a bathroom, and a small living room kitchen area. There's barely enough room to swing a cat, but it's all been built for my needs and it works well for me. From the start of their tenancy, they've been nothing but a pain. There's a mother who is about 60, a daughter who is about 30, and daughter's boyfriend, and a large dog in the unit the same size as mine. The first week they were okay, but then they started their ridiculous behavior. throwing their rubbish over their balcony into my backyard, using my backyard as their own ashtray, tipping their dirty dishwater over their balcony, sometimes tipping the water into my clothesline. They're fighting constantly, slamming their doors, leaving the dog out on the balcony most of the time, making the dog howl and bark most of the day. They drink excessively, which makes their fighting and other bad behaviors worse. They drop their clothes over the balcony. I talked to the tenants and asked them nicely not to drop things into my backyard. When they answered me, I wanted to scream. They claimed to not know what I was talking about, but promised to keep an eye out. This stopped them doing it for a while, but a few months later, it started again. I gave up asking them directly and went to the landlord, hoping he would mediate. I started to get scared of the man that was up there, as police were called multiple times when he would get violent. And then 2020 happened and things got worse. Lockdown was enforced in my state from March until mid-June, which is when their fighting started getting scarier. They began drinking more, and I suspect they were using other substances. A few days after lockdown is when they started playing their music. Having units so close together makes hearing music and other noises inevitable. But they had a boombox that played so loudly that my floors would rattle, and wearing earplugs did nothing to dampen the noise. This went on for 3 months from 10 AM until 10 PM, and sometimes even longer. I reached my breaking point. I made countless noise complaints to the authorities, the council, and the landlord, all of which did nothing until I made an official noise complaint to the authorities. The tenants were giving a 6-month noise abatement order. Breaking the order would result in their eviction. This quieted them down for a little while at least. Now that you know where I'm coming from, this is what happened. Yesterday I found a note scrunched up at my front door. At first I thought it was rubbish that had been blown there, but then I noticed there was writing on it. I had a look and instantly rolled my eyes. It said, "This is Unit 204. I dropped a brown nightgown into your backyard. Will you bring it back to us?" I had a look for it and it was around the side of my backyard, along the grass, down a slope. There was no way that I could access where it was sitting. The tenants know I'm in a wheelchair and have very little mobility. This is where I got petty about it. I called the landlord and asked if they could contact the tenant on my behalf. I would have had no problem if the tenant knocked on my door and asked to get it themselves. I'm not a total cow, and I told the landlord that. The landlord relayed the message. Then they got back to me, telling me that the tenant had made a seriously dumb suggestion. They told me to ask that one of my care workers get it for them. I said no, it's not their job. In the end, one of the neighbors got it for me and gave it back to them. I know I was petty about it, but I just wanted them to be an adult and fetch their own stuff, and not expect me or anyone else to do it for them. I understand that accidents happen, but after the nightmare they've put me through, I didn't feel like doing them any more favors. Seriously, how entitled do you have to be to ask a person in a wheelchair to get something you dropped? I know this person felt petty about their response, but I think it was more than warranted. We bought a house in April, and the neighbors across the street from us are in the process of moving out. They have a huge house with 6 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms that was top of the line 25 years ago. It was listed for $600K about 6 weeks ago and has been pending 3 times. It's now at $500K. So I'm assuming an inspector is finding an issue. The other houses in my neighborhood that are that size are selling. They asked us to help change light bulbs and fix little things, which was perfectly fine at first. They've now started sending requests, painting their frame of the screened patio, replacing faucets, and cleaning their house. We painted their screened-in patio because we thought, mistake, it was the last thing they'd ask. We honestly felt bad because the house is in need of some major TLC. It's got the original carpet and has been cleaned and stretched so many times that it is desperately in need of being ripped out. And that's not the only problem. The bathroom tubs are peeling, the house was freshly painted but was terribly done. When they put it up for sale, they left some huge furniture that they requested us to sell, and we could keep 10% of the profits. They acted like this was a huge reward. We kept going along with their requests, but now they're going too far. They want us to sell their 20-year-old couch, mattress, 3 dressers, and a bunch of other outdated furniture that is worth nothing, and weighs a ton, and is upstairs. Obviously, it didn't sell for anything, and is still sitting upstairs in their house. One person came for a dresser, and it was too heavy for us to move, so we figured this is all custom built and assembled in the room. And they didn't stop there. When they left, they requested us to do a daily walkthrough and send daily reports of their house, which is fine, but we stopped after a week because we have our own house that we are working on, our jobs, and we're not trying to spend weekends and time off at someone else's house when we literally bought a house to spend time there. We both get up at 4 a.m. for work, get home around 4:30 p.m., eat, and will sometimes literally nap the majority of the rest of the day. Yesterday was one of those days. I had no idea what was coming. Little did I know, these neighbors were back in town and had called us several times after 7 p.m. Once we get off work, we don't look at phones. It was like we'd let the genie out of the bottle, and now it wouldn't go back in. They texted us multiple times. We knew it was time to cut them off. We gave them polite replies but said we weren't able to help them. We wind down for the day around 7 p.m. because we get up at 4 a.m. They knocked on our door at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. according to our Ring camera. If they really had a problem, they wouldn't be going to just my house. They'd be asking other people. I really want to just tell these people that we cannot help them anymore, and this is not my problem. Every time we leave their house after doing these things, we both feel so bad because it needs so much work. It's so dirty, and with 3 people walking away from it, there has got to be major issues, as I noticed it goes back on the market after each time an inspector visits. Wow, you try to be neighborly and help out and this is what you get? Just because someone does you a favor doesn't mean they're your permanent unpaid assistant. The person in the story has way more patience than me because I would never put up with this. Last month, my daughter had a seizure. I had my teenage sisters staying over at the time, so my parents came to pick them up. My dad's car blocked over a bit of my neighbor's driveway as he came to collect the girls. A few minutes later, my neighbor knocked on the door. I thought she might be seeing if everyone was okay or if she could help. But boy was I mistaken. She was demanding the car be moved. It was nearly midnight and the ambulance was blocking our driveway. My dad immediately went out and moved the car and apologized. He explained they didn't mean to block her in. Quite a few times since that night, the neighbor has now come by and done the pettiest thing imaginable. She has started to park over our drive and block us in. It got to the point where we had to change the way we park. When she's blocked us in, we've knocked on the door to ask her to move, and her reaction is even more immature. She doesn't answer the door. We can hear her in the house, but she doesn't answer. It's driving us crazy, and we've now got to the stage where we're trying to get a lawyer's advice. Can you imagine someone coming to yell at you when there's clearly an ambulance and EMTs there trying to work? Talk about inhuman. Now, I enjoy a bit of petty revenge as much as the next person, but I think it's so diabolical for her to think this is justified because someone briefly blocked her driveway. My next door neighbor is a middle-aged woman who lives with her elderly mom. Not because her mom needs to be taken care of, I believe it's the other way around. She doesn't work and is basically a little girl in a 50-year-old body. I work from home and this woman is home all day doing who knows what. It started out simple enough, but now I'm living in a total nightmare. Whenever I go outside, she magically appears and gives me her expert advice on whatever I'm doing. If I engage in a conversation with her just to be nice, it'll eat up 20 to 30 minutes of my time. It's one of those inescapable conversations. And the same thing keeps happening. And if I do anything, and I mean anything, like bite my fingernails out of nervousness because I don't know when I'll be able to exit this conversation, she'll go, "Stop! Wait, I got a cream for that." Or if I shoo away a fly, she'll go, "Wait, I got the best bug spray. Top of the line." Everything she has is top of the line or the most expensive, highest quality out there. And she's got something for everything. I literally can't move around her because she's got something for everything I'm doing. One time she caught me painting a statue in my garden. She came over with boxes and boxes of paint. And once she starts up with a new topic, tack on another 20 minutes of time. And that's just my experience with her while I'm outside. Behind closed doors, it's even worse. Before I knew any of this about her, I made the mistake of inviting her into my house for a cup of tea. No, wait, let me correct that. She actually saw me drinking coffee on my front porch one day and asked if she could have one. While I found that a bit intrusive, I felt rude saying no, so I made her one. And while I was making her coffee in my kitchen, she continued talking to me from my front porch. And I couldn't really hear what she was saying. It felt rude, so I invited her into the foyer rather than have her stand outside. I didn't know at the time, but that was probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. Now she comes over twice, sometimes 3 times a week for coffee. And whenever she sees me outside, she asks, "Can I have a coffee?" When she rings my doorbell and I answer the door to greet her, she's basically stepping into my house, like a vampire that I can't stop from coming inside because I've already made the mistake of inviting her in once. And each time she comes in, I face new horrors. She's getting more and more comfortable in my house, sitting on my couch. The most disgusting part, She reeks of smoke and the smell permeates every room she enters. And now she's asking to borrow things, browsing the shelves in my living room, and then exclaiming, "Oh, my mom would love to read this. I'll bring it back. You know where I live anyway." This was my mistake, I know. But how do I undo all of this in the nicest way possible? If I had my way, I would have it so that she never comes back into my house ever again. She is my neighbor, not my friend. She's not my type of person. We have nothing in common. I just want to be left alone. This one is a doozy, because on the surface she's nice, but beneath that, she's so insidiously annoying that I can see this one ending pretty badly. It's one thing to be friendly, it's another to continuously make someone uncomfortable in their own home. This woman called her a vampire and she's totally right. She's a psychic vampire. I'm a single 32-year-old female, and I bought my house in September of 2020. It's fully fenced in, but it's a chain link on my neighbor's side. They seem to be in their 60s, but the wife is a total weirdo. She thinks I'm after her husband because I've spoken to him 3 times. She even told me I'm disrespectful for talking to him about mulching the property line and apologizing for my dogs barking. She has been stalking us, waiting for us to go outside, and then she goes on her back porch and cusses, threatening my dogs. It wasn't always this way. This lady used to baby talk to my dogs and now threatens to shoot them. The other morning at 5 a.m., I went out to walk my dog, and I was confronted with a nightmare. There she was, standing outside her property waiting for me, threatening to shoot me if I ever crossed the property line. At that point, I called the cops. They agreed that she is nuts, and then they told me her bizarre history. Apparently, other people have called about her. She thinks everyone wants her husband, so she lied to the cops and said she feels threatened for her life. Then they basically told me I should call them anytime she does something like that again, and to put up security cameras. That evening, I came home to a cardboard sign on the tree facing my house. When I read it, I burst out laughing. It says, "Private property, keep off. This is from her husband." There's no way her husband wrote that. But then she took it up a notch. She just reported that my dogs are running around at large and she feared for her life, even though they are always either leashed or in the backyard. Oh, and those cameras I ordered? The irony. They were delivered today, but the delivery person delivered it to their house and she won't give my package to me. I put up a letter in her mailbox asking her to give it back. So tomorrow I may have to call the cops again to go over and ask for it. This is insane, all because she thinks I want her old, grumpy husband. Jealousy is a powerful emotion, but I think there's gotta be more than jealousy going on here for this woman to act so absolutely unhinged. I'd probably be scared if I wasn't imagining her sitting alone writing a sign that says, "Private property, keep off, this is from her husband." My downstairs neighbor took me to court because of how much noise my kitten was making. I'd been in the building for 3 years at this point and had permission to get a cat. When I got her, she was so small, she weighed just a few pounds. Regardless, whenever she played or ran down the hall, as kittens do, my neighbor would bang on the ceiling. Then, eventually, he resorted to calling the cops. Whenever I opened the door and showed them the source of the noise, they'd laugh. Sadly, they said they had to keep coming as long as he kept calling. After the 5th or 6th time, they ignored him. He told me he was taking me to court for elder abuse. I couldn't believe it. And neither could the judge, who sent us for mediation, which he failed. It landed up back in court a few times. Yeah, this was a nightmare, but when I talked to my landlord about it, his reply stunned me. After multiple court dates and mediation, I told the landlord that he had to get the neighbor to stop harassing me, because going to court for such trivial manner was really making the judge angry, and he kept threatening to make us pay for court costs. The landlord just said, "Oh yeah, he's a character," and walked away. I already had plans to move to another state, but knowing I had no support at a home I paid good money for really pushed me to get out of there faster. Now I live in a much better building, and I've never heard a word from my neighbors. Yeah, a frivolous noise complaint is one thing, but this is next level. There's no way that tiny kitten made more noise than regular human footsteps. I think this guy had to be seriously unwell to take things that far. Thank God this lady got out of there. That's the last of these tales about nightmare neighbors, but check out the other videos on our channel for more weird and wonderful stories ripped straight from real life.